Gaming industry lost its mind. True.
Recently, a nasty little conversation has reared its ugly head yet again, and it's that the video game industry believes that it's time for games to be $100 or more.
Jesus.
Mark my words. If this is the path that the industry chooses to follow, this will likely lead to the largest collapse this industry has ever seen. They think that the layoffs, closures, and canceled games are bad now. You haven't seen anything yet. The players already have a long list of reasons as to why not to buy games today, and you want to go and add an even bigger reason to that list? Likely.
Here's a good example, right? Is that you can use the inflation argument as much as you want, but they made Kingdom Come Deliverance for like 41 million bucks, and Black Myth Wukong was for like 60, 70, or 80 million. So like, really, all this is going to end up doing is it's going to make you non-competitive in the market because you're competing in a global marketplace with different currency rates and different rates of payment. And so if you have places on in other parts of the world that are making the product way cheaper than you are, and the product is relatively similar, then, and you know, the problem here is that it's actually better, is that you're going to just lose in the free market. You're signing your own death warrant. That's it.
The vast majority of players, the reason that will be at the very top of their list. You know, for years now, we've heard about how they think that the video game industry bubble is going to burst because there's just been so much investor interest over the years. The wages have increased, the cost of development and marketing has gone up, and the long development cycles that these games are in, 7 to 10 years in some cases, is just not making these games financially viable. These big AAA, these big shiny AAA games are too expensive to make for such little return.
Yeah.
So they've gotten themselves thinking, well, how do we fix this issue? What's the actual problem here? I mean,
you fire all the people who have useless jobs that contribute nothing to the actual product. You narrow down the scope of your projects. You take down the, you know, you look at the 80-20 rule and you see where 80% of your fucking money is going for like water physics. You fire all of those people. You get rid of everybody there that has a job because they, you know, somebody else says they needed a job to manage somebody who manages somebody else. And you get people in there that do work. That's the way you do it. The DEI, well, I mean, of course you fire them. They're done, right? But like, you do that, like, you're going to have games. You're going to have no problems. That's it. Like, you fire useless people that don't do anything, that create no real product. Like, they're not doing anything. They're not adding anything to the game. Like, you ask yourself, like, is this person adding value to the game at a rate that they're costing? The answer probably for a lot of these people is no. So get rid of them. It's so easy.
Can't be that our, you know, leadership is incompetent. It can't be the slop that we've been delivering to the customers. It can't be that we've been over-investing in the projects.
Remember when Seato Iwata, I don't know if I'm pronouncing the first name right, one of the co-chairman and like one of the main people at Nintendo took a massive pay cut when the Wii U didn't do well? I've never heard of a Western CEO or a Western leader doing that.
It has to be that the customer's not paying enough money.
Yeah.
That has to be the solution to this. So today what we're going to do is we're going to listen to the industry's long list of excuses as to why we need to be paying $100 or more. We're going to watch on as journalists seal clap the industry's death march into oblivion, and we're going to talk about why I think the players aren't going to buy. This isn't the first time we've had to have this conversation. Back in 2023, Capcom's president came forward at an event in Japan and explained that video game prices were far too low even after the price hike up to $70, explaining that video game development costs are 100 times more expensive than they've ever been, and games haven't followed inflation like other industries. And he's not wrong. In 1990, a standard game would cost around $50. Right. Adjust for inflation, that would be closer to $100 today. Yet, even with the price hikes in 2020 up to $70 for AAA games, the reality is
you can justify it however much that you want, and I think that there are a lot of logical arguments that people can make for why a video game should be $100, but all of the logic in the world doesn't make somebody give you $100. A value proposition that is compelling causes them to give you $100. And the value propositions are simply not compelling. Is people like this don't know the fundamentals of sales and the fundamentals of selling. And because of that, they've been so lost in the sauce of bureaucracy and executive management that they forgot how to actually look at things from the eyes of a consumer. $100 for a video game that's problematic is just simply not going to work. The number is too big. $90 I think is possible. $100 I don't think is possible yet.
Is that the industry just hasn't kept pace. Over the same time period from 1990s to today, wages, marketing, and development costs have all skyrocketed. Game studios are spending exponentially more money than they ever did in the 90s or early 2000s, so the profit made on the sale of a single game has shrunk year over year. If we were to adjust in line with inflation,
they need to go after those like kids fire everybody from the federal government. They need to have EA needs to hire them. Blizzard needs to hire those like 21-year-old racists and have them go into Blizzard and just take care of it, right?
from the early days of gaming to today,
bring in big
AAA
balls.
games would be priced well over $100, maybe even $150 to be able to match today's financial realities. Now, all of that makes sense with nuance removed. However, we don't live in a world without nuance. The fact of the matter is that the vast majority of games that are released today make far more money past the point of sale. Something that didn't exist back when games were being made in the 90s and early 2000s, while they still had merchandise, toys, and clothing and other...
There's infinitely many different... Like, you can never step in the same river twice, right? And so now you have way less production costs, but you have higher distribution costs in some cases through things like Steam. You also have microtransactions, but you don't have deluxe editions that are as big of a component to sales as they used to be when they were physical copies. You're not selling physical copies anymore, but you also have microtransactions. And so you're comparing so many apples to so many oranges. It's very hard to say whether it's justified or not. And at the end of the day, it's not relevant as to whether it's justified or not. It's only relevant as to whether people are willing to pay that price or not. Because you can justify it as much as you want, and you can be right. Being right doesn't mean people have to agree with you.
Different things that they could sell. Now, today, games have
So
DLC,
foolish.
loot boxes, gotcha and gambling mechanics, microtransactions,
what a waste
expansions,
of money. This
collector's
bitch
editions,
sucked.
and more. I'm sorry, but you can't convince me that video game companies aren't making enough money today, or there aren't enough ways for them to make money. However, games journalist and industry analyst Matthew Ball are going to try to tell us otherwise. In an article written by Eddie Mackich titled GTA 6 could cost as much as $100, some hope. Analyst clarifies comments. If Take-Two raises prices to $80...
I love how also, like, I hope that all of these other companies that are like slop farms don't think that now that GTA 6 breaks the glass ceiling, that now they can charge $100 for like their piece of shit. I really hope that they don't think that's what's going to happen. Like, people pay $100 for Baldur's Gate 4. They pay $100 for Elden Ring 2. They're not going to pay $100 for, fucking generic, fucking random current year slop. Not going to pay $100 for Concord. Not going to pay $100 for Veilguard. It's not going to happen.
Or more, other publishers could apparently follow suit. Eddie writes, veteran investment analyst and researcher Matthew Ball of Opinion has released a gargantuan 219-page report about the state of video gaming in 2025, and some of the presentation looks at how the video game industry could possibly grow in 2025. In a section titled How Player, Playtime, and Player Spend Might Return to Growth, Ball mentioned a variety of opportunities, including Grand Theft Auto 6 costing as much as $100 when it launches this year. Ball said that there is hope among some in the game market that Take-Two will price GTA 6 at $80 or even $100, which could prove as a turning point for the video game industry. This could break a key price barrier and allow developers to raise their prices as well, he said. Before this, a Baldur's Gate 3 developer said
it's not going to happen. People still complain about $70. And also, like, the other issue is that people don't you can make these sales and one day video games will be an average of $100. But I don't really think that we're there for the average customer yet. I just don't really think so. People will only spend that much money for insanely good once-a-year games. To act like you can make this the new normal is peak delusion.
GTA 6 could prompt a shift to more expensive games if Take-Two decides to price it above $70. In a series of follow-up posts, Ball shared further key updates, including how GTA 4 was priced at $90 in real terms, with GTA 5 costing $83. Ball added, your rent is up, movie tickets have doubled, minimum wage, Spotify, Netflix, bus fare, gas, etc. Indeed, nearly all categories are up, not just flat in real terms.
And the worst part about it is that he's right about everything that he's saying. Everything about this is accurate. All of these things are true, but none of it matters if the consumer isn't willing to spend the money. You can make economic arguments, you can show people graphs, but showing somebody a graph doesn't make them give you $80. That just makes them say, wow, damn, that's crazy.
While games are at record lows. He went on to say Rockstar's cost isn't sufficient to set the price, but the argument games should be the only thing never to adjust for inflation and thus be, in the strictest terms, worth less every year is not healthy either or a good argument, in my opinion. Ball was not making a prediction himself that GTA 6 would cost $100, only that there is a belief in the market by some that it could happen. For his money, Ball said that GTA 6 will cost $70. I can't believe I have to say this, but customers only ever care about inflation when said inflation affects them and their money. $100 is $100. Whether it's 1990 or 2025, no matter how you spin it, what excuses you make, or what numbers you point to, the vast majority of people just flat out cannot afford those prices. And
it's also that, like, there's the psychological marketing, right? I mean, it's like odd even pricing. I mean, this is something you learn. You take one business class in college and you learn this. They probably teach this in high school in some places. That's why everything is $9.99 or $7. It's because people just perceive that to be less money.
Far more difficult time justifying buying games day one or buying games at all. My friends with kids buy maybe 1-2 games a year, or they just spend their money on indie games because they're far cheaper, they tend to have more replay value, and they don't take as long to complete. My friends
that are like, these are like my long-term 20-year friends, they play Baldur's Gate 3, Cyberpunk, Factorio, Elden Ring. Oh, and I have a friend, he's playing the new Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic game again. Because we played it growing up. Yeah. That's it. Terraria. Yeah, I've got another friend plays Terraria. Had to play Terraria with his girlfriend.
Without kids, well, they work too much and they can't even justify buying a $70 game, and they just choose to play free-to-play games instead. Gen Z is so maladjusted and ambivalent due to the pandemic that they can't even find work, and even if they do, they can't hold jobs for long. The vast majority of them are choosing to become NEETs out of choice. Who are they playing?
Based? True.
Planning to sell these games to, and where are they going to find the money? When Ball mentions how GTA 4 was priced at $90 in real terms, he's talking about how the price of GTA, adjusting for inflation, was priced above inflation at the time, making $59.99 feel like $90 at the time.
Yeah, it was a lot of money.
And that's why it should be completely...
No, it was a lot of money. Like, my mom was like, she's like, you think I'm going to buy you a $50 fucking game? How long are you going to play that game for? I remember back in the day, like Super Nintendo and N64 days... Like, she was like, you've got to really convince me on this game. You've got to sell me on this game. Now, I mean, there were the easy ones. Like, I just say, Mom, Legend of Zelda. She says, oh, okay. We buy. And I remember it wasn't Majora's Mask. So you had to get, like, remember the N64, you had to get that memory thing, that red shit. And then wasn't Majora's Mask $60? Because it was like a gold cartridge or some shit. I remember we bought it from, like, a Walmart. Yeah, like that was it. Because damn, was it 70? Yeah, I forgot. I have to go downstairs. I still got the box.
For games to be $90 or $100 today.
I actually remember
Here's
the
the
day
other
that we
thing they're
bought that.
missing. $100 isn't just a number. It's a cultural touchstone. It's a psychological threshold that makes consumers think twice before making the purchase. Crossing that $100 mark makes a statement. It's saying that this product is now a luxury tier item. Something that isn't just an impulse buy, but an investment, whether it's worth it or not. And that's when that feeling
hits. You want to hear a really fun inflation fact? The purchasing power of $3 in like the early 1900s is roughly equivalent to $100 now.
The hardest. It's not just about the price tag. It's about the perception of value and what people can reasonably spend in an already stretched economy. Look, a $100 purchase feels like it demands a justification. I can't tell you guys how many times I had to overcome dread when I was wanting to upgrade from a $30 webcam and a $50 microphone. Yeah. For many, this is going to be a breaking point. The moment where games start to feel more like an exclusive club for the people that can afford it and less like a pastime accessible to anyone who loves the medium.
That's also another really big problem he's bringing up, is that video games are mainly for young guys, and young guys care about video games the most because video games are the first place that young men have an opportunity to prove themselves on an even playing field with other people that are not just their peers. So, like, for example, when you play a video game in Fortnite, like, let's say you're playing Marvel Rivals and you're 14, you're not going to get gapped by some 30-year-old with a job. Now, the reality is that you actually have an advantage over him, not just genetically because you're younger, you have, like, naturally faster reflexes, but also because, like, you don't even know what a mortgage is. You have an income tax. What the fuck is So a 401k, what is that? You're 14 years old. All you know about is, playing this character and being good at this, right? You don't even know, like, a 1040. Like, what's a 1040? Is that like a, is that like a Fortnite move or something? And so, yeah, you don't even know shit. So you can, like, 100% zero in on a video game. And so, yeah, is that the new graphics card or something? And so that's really a big difference too, is that young guys and people without a lot of resources look to video games as an outlet for them to experience life on an even playing field. And I think that that's a really big component that's not discussed enough. And I think that desire is partially naive, but it exists.
Barrier that not only reflects inflation, but also sets the tone for how the industry views its audience. One where only a select few can afford or truly engage with what the industry has to offer. I just hate how disingenuous all of this is. Ball says the prices for all things are up, and the idea that games need to stay the same price isn't fair, conveniently ignoring the fact that while
the problem is that he's right, but it doesn't matter. That's the issue. When we are old, we are going to look back and say, you remember back in the day when video games were only $100? We're going to do that one day. But not today.
Upfront price of games has remained relatively stable. The way that games are monetized has changed drastically. In-game purchases, microtransactions, season passes, battle passes, and expensive collector's editions have all become the norm. Game companies have found new, more aggressive ways to squeeze every dollar from the player far beyond the original price tag. A $60 to $70 game is no longer just that. It's an entry point to truly experience whatever the game has to offer.
It's like whenever you pay for a girl's OnlyFans and then you find out that everything in the OnlyFans is actually pay-per-view. So you have to pay a subscription to be part of the OnlyFans, and then you have to pay for the content on top of that. How would you know? Because I dated girls that did that. Yeah, they paid for my dinner plenty of times. It was great.
Are often pressured into spending far more in additional content. Customers aren't just paying more, they're paying far beyond what they originally bargained for, and that's what should be addressed, not just the price tag on the box. And what's even more funny about all of this is the fact that the writer of this article actually ended up using the Baldur's Gate 3 developers' words out of context. And by the way, if you guys have paid attention at all to journalism,
I love how they like to compare like Baldur's Gate 3 to like the new Assassin's Creed or like Star Wars Outlaws. Like, oh yeah, this is like, these are both AAA games. Like, yeah, these are both AAA games. Yeah, like a firework, like a black cat and a grenade are both explosives. They both explode. Yeah, for sure.
Last couple of years, they've been using Baldur's Gate 3 developers out of context constantly because they think it adds some type of emotional weight to whatever their words are. Like, oh, look, here's this great developer that made a game that everybody loves saying that they agree with us, when 9 times out of 10, their words are completely out of context. Yeah. They used it here saying that everybody's just waiting for GTA to increase the price, acting like the Baldur's Gate 3 developers want GTA to increase the price. When
but I don't think we'll get there with DLC promises. Yeah, so that's a really
The
important
original tweet
component.
that they had made was talking about how
Yeah.
much they hated artificial price structures and gouging that we see in today's gaming industry. The original tweet actually said, I don't love the artificiality of pricing structures post-retail. Use the inflated base price to upsell a subscription
Yep.
and use vague content promises to inflate ultimate editions to make the base price look better. It all seems a bit dangerous and disconnected from the community.
That's a
I
fact.
think the game should be priced according to its quality, breadth, and depth. I'm not against higher prices,
That
but
is how it used to fucking be, and they stopped doing this in the GameCube era. Before that, that's how it used to be. And this guy's, you can tell, look at his hairline. He remembers that.
this arbitrary uniformity just doesn't make sense to me. It feels so unserious. I'm going to go off for a second. Don't you guys love how every single time they like to twist things to be able to suit whatever their narrative is, and everything is always coming from the perspective of the industry and never from the perspective of the player, of the customer, the people that are actually spending money on these things to begin with? Because we are never a priority. We are never at the forefront of discussion. We are never at the forefront of their mind when they're making these decisions. And then they sit back and
It's
they wonder.
actually crazy how you can have people that are visionary product designers and visionary like innovators in the industry. I think two great examples are Michael Dell and Steve Jobs for computers recently. And both of them looked explicitly at the consumer experience and worked backwards from that. And then you have these clowns that somehow, like, you literally have it written out for you. They wrote a book on how to do it. It's not like you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Just start rolling. And they're not. They can't use a fucking wheel. So Jobs is a great salesman. Yeah, nobody listens to fucking customer. It's nuts.
Why games are failing and studios are closing. I don't know how could that possibly happen? The prices for everything is going up. You're absolutely right. Now that I think about it, you know what hasn't gone up with inflation? The general quality and day one performance of video games. Even some of the best games that we've seen released over the last few years can't even hit a standardized level of quality. We are spending $60 to $70 on brand new day one video games that we have to sit there and hold the bag because the game's not even finished, because it's always the minimum viable product that's being
Yeah, the MVP. This ain't sports, bro. Most valuable player? Minimum viable product. That means the biggest piece of shit that we can get you to pay for. And Avowed, they just come out and they say, they're like, yeah, we know this is going to be fucked on release. And it's like, yeah, I get it, right? But you can't go and say that and then be surprised if people don't want to give you $90 for a deluxe edition.
Released to us, and we have to wait for them to finish the game for us to be able to play it. But let me take a wild guess and say they're probably going to try to blame the price of things on that as well.
For sure. It's Trump.
They want to talk about how expensive it is to make games today. You know, my question is,
that's what game developers are going to try and do. They're going to try and blame. They're going to say Trump tariffs are making our video games too expensive, and so now we have to charge you more. So you have to hate Trump.
The ones that need to keep up with you and your spending. We didn't sign up for that. When I look around the industry, I see some of the most successful games over the last few years: Baldur's Gate 3, Black Myth Wukong, Space Marine 2. These games are made with a quarter of the budget of some of these big
Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. Look at that. They said they made that game for like $41 million. Huh. How'd that happen?
Actually, AAA games that nobody ended up buying in the first place. You guys are making tens of billions of dollars. The vast majority of the money that is made in this industry is coming from microtransactions.
Yep.
This is not my problem.
Yep.
The sheer cowardice.
You've got to stop asking the consumer to take on the accountability from the business. Stop asking consumers to do that. That's not how you run a business. You run a business by creating a product, creating value that people are willing to give you money for. A lot of things beyond that, almost everything beyond that, is noise.
Of these companies to sit by and wait for somebody else to increase prices because They know it's a game, or they think it's a game that everybody's going to buy, and it's going to be the best way to just sneak that price change in. And that is so telling, because you are pathetic and you realize that your games wouldn't sell.
That's right, because they suck.
Asmon, thanks for unpausing. Eddie continues with $70 is...
He was right. I mean, shit, he was right. I mean, fuck. I don't know what to say. Yeah.
The current market rate for new AAA releases, and in fact, it was Take-Two that was among the first to raise prices from $60 to $70 back in 2020. Many are naturally wondering if Take-Two might raise prices again for GTA 6's launch. But it remains to be seen if that'll happen. Beyond updating the sticker price for games, video publishers have found other ways to be able to make more money out of players, including expensive editions, microtransactions, and battle passes, just to name a few. GTA 5, for example, has sold 205 million copies and brings in a lot of money in microtransactions in GTA Online.
Shark cards.
Early predictions have said that GTA 6 could sell 40 million copies and earn more than $3 billion in revenue during its first year alone.
Wow.
Ball said that GTA 6's launch this year will have mixed impact on total player hours and revenue across the gaming industry, because it'll only be available on console. The PC release is expected after the console launch. However, Ball said that GTA 6 will severely cannibalize total hours and spending that would go to other video games when it launches. For its
of course, that's what happens. It's the same reason why this game killed Overwatch. Like, you see this game going like this, you see Overwatch going it's dying.
Ubisoft said GTA 6 is a good thing for the video game industry overall, because a huge game like that may help more people turn to gaming.
It is.
Some of the other areas that Ball listed off as having potential for growth in 2025 included further expansions into non-core markets, user-generated content, social game services, the Nintendo Switch 2, other new handhelds and devices, AA, AAA, mobile gaming, app store regulation, new game releases, generative AI, and advertising. Make this make sense. I do not understand how GTA 6, projecting 40 million copies sold and $3 billion in revenue in its first year, is somehow a footnote in a discussion as to why other games should increase their prices to $100. They are failing to realize why GTA 5 did so well, why GTA 6 is likely to do even better, or why it could even sell for $100 in the first place.
It's people that think that, like, they see one person who's successful, and they look at the person go through the finish line, and they say, oh, okay, I'm going to start running this race. But they don't realize that this person trained for it for like 20 years. Like, yeah, if you remove all context, this makes sense. But if you think about it, it stops making sense.
Even thinking about what the impact...
think about how many... That's a good example, right? Is streamers. Think about how many streamers there are. Oh, well, all you do is just sit there and play video games. Well, I can do that. I'm going to stream and be a millionaire. And then you do it and nobody watches the show. I think that's another good example. In a way, it worked before. Yeah, exactly. That's just how it isn't. It doesn't work. It's easy, right? Yeah, it's easy. People just want to sit there and they don't understand a lot of the context about it. It's the same as crypto or like investing in general. They don't understand anything about how to make money. They just think that if they put $300 in a Hawk Tuah coin, they'll be a fucking millionaire.
A price increase would be on other games and other studios outside of one of the biggest video game franchises of all time. $70 is the new current market rate for AAA releases? No, I think it's the going market rate for trash. The best releases on PC over the past 2 years have been $60. I mean, take a minute to think about it. If game prices were $100 today, what games...
It's actually a really good point. Like Elden Ring and I think Baldur's Gate 3 both were $60, right? They weren't even 70.
Realistically come out at $100. Suicide Squad Kills the Justice League, Assassin's Creed Shadows, Skull and Bones, Star Wars Outlaws, Dragon Age the Veilguard, Diablo 4, Call of Duty, The Sims, sports games, trash, generic slop. and in some cases, absolute dumpster fires. And while some of them still would have reached an audience, they wouldn't have reached an audience of the same size because they would have cut off their leg to save a foot in regards to the game's price. I mean, think about what you're saying here. Even Ball mentions how GTA 6 is likely to cannibalize the sales and playtime of other games when they're released. Now imagine these morons raising their prices to $100. Good games sell well and bad games don't. And from my perspective, if the price of games were to increase, it's going to price a lot of players out of a lot of games, and the entire market is going to shift. Good games.
Another really big component to this that's not considered enough is the effects this has on second world and third world country markets. And I think that the biggest one is South America. South America are some of the most dedicated and invested communities online for video games in the entire world. And so when you make games like that and you don't have regional pricing for people like that, you lose this massive fan base that you could potentially have. Big numbers. Yeah, exactly. Like it's insane.
Will sell well, and bad games won't
so it's
sell
like
at
we're
all.
only thinking
which
about
means
this
a
from like
minor
a Western
mistake could
first
have
world country
catastrophic
POV.
consequences for some of these studios, and the
So for
gap
everybody
between
else, it's like
successes
10
is going to
times
become
worse.
an ocean many studios cannot cross. I do not understand why the conversation isn't focused around how much money these companies are spending on games. Companies that cannot properly budget their own projects, set realistic sales projections, or even target an audience's needs properly. Ubisoft spends hundreds of millions of dollars on a busted-ass pirate ship simulator. EA invested hundreds of millions into an educational HR video disguised as Dragon Age.
Educational. That's about right.
And we have so many more studios that are torching millions of dollars on bloated games filled with busy work and realistic eyelashes. What are we doing
Exactly.
here?
Nobody gives a fuck. Original remaster. Like, I'm sorry, but like, nobody asked. And also, let's say some people asked. Who asked for more? Which group of people had more askers? This or Bloodborne?
This industry is in a state of entropy where they just keep pressing forward, they keep spending more money, they're adding nothing to the core experience, and the customer is the one that is expected to keep up with their spending. They want to blame the failures of the industry
Luckily, there's a Chinese knockoff version of that game coming out that looks like it's going to be way better. They stole everything from Elden Ring, so I'm going to assume it's going to be pretty fun. Yeah, you can even build mechs and shit like that in the game. It's going to be awesome. Total fucking knockoff.
not making enough money, only to distract from the fact that it's
Light
their
of
fault
Ultron.
that people are losing their jobs.
They
Studios
stole
are closing
everything
and
from
sales
Horizon.
are dwindling.
I can't wait to
I actually
play it.
read through Matthew Ball's 223-page presentation, and he
200?
unwittingly proved it himself. In 2020, IDC, Google, ARC, and SMP all made projections on what they thought the industry would look like with its growth in the coming years. They viewed the pandemic boom as an accelerant, not an anomaly. Yes, these idiots thought that COVID was the future. ARC Investments forecasted that the industry would grow by 50% in 4 years, from $200 billion to $300 billion. Meaning that investors, blindly trusting speculators,
Jesus, man. I feel bad for those investors. They really got hoodwinked.
ran to invest in
Jesus.
these companies and publishers, and in turn, those companies, flush with cash, invested heavily into their new future.
Yeah, I
only
bet
for
they
them to be
did.
met with the crushing reality that none of those predictions would come true outside of Ampere. So if you're going to use them for investment, they're actually probably the better bet. They don't want game prices to increase for inflation. They want game prices to increase to make up for their colossal financial hole that they've dug themselves into.
Yeah.
The pandemic led to a wave of overly optimistic projections. Popular forecasters and analysts predicted that gaming would experience perpetual growth, an assumption that was rooted in a brief surge during lockdowns. These predictions were reckless, overlooking the fundamental truth. Once the pandemic subsided, people had to return to the working world. Inflation would
and
then
it's
hit.
also that like during the pandemic, that's whenever you had like all that DEI shit and all these other jobs that got added into the workforce that actually didn't contribute to the end product. So whenever you bring in 20 people onto the payroll, you really bring in about 25 people onto the payroll, because you need to have somebody manage those people. You need to have somebody account for those people, literally, with the money. And then you have to have somebody that deals with the people that deal with them. And so, like, there's like a pyramid that happens with every type of addition into a company. And so these things don't exist in a vacuum. So you add in this like massive amount of people and you're going to be in a bad spot.
Hard. I think a lot of people forget just how much of an impact stimulus checks had in the U.S. You had people that were low income and middle class earners that were making more money through unemployment than they ever did while they were employed. This ended up leading to a lot of unrealistic and excessive spending, especially given how much time they had on their hands. Yeah. How the hell could you believe that the sales and engagement gaming saw in 2020 and 2021 would stay the same? Then I found out
this also happened with streamers and content creators too.
How delusional they are. When I came across the slide that was talking about the shortfall of spending and how players were spending less money and how there were less hours that were spent in games and how that led to an unprecedented number of commercial disappointments and flops. Forspoken, Skull and Bones, Concord, Halo Infinite, Redfall, Star Wars Outlaws, Avatar. These games didn't fail because of some esoteric lack in spending. It's because these games sucked. Now, after I saw this, it got me thinking.
You got this one, people thought sucked dick. This one sucked dick. This one sucked so much dick they're having to shut it down. I don't even know what this is. So this is like, you know what I said about building 100 bridges and sucking one dick? Well, these people, they sucked, let's see, I don't know, what's this? 15 plus 9, 24 dicks. Yeah, what happens when you don't build any bridges and you just suck 24 dicks? Not so good, huh?
It's because these games sucked. Now, after I saw this, it got me thinking. I'll admit that I was taken aback when I saw just how much...
As a matter of fact, yes.
...the industry had receded after 2020. I had expected a decline, sure, but not to that extent. It took me a while to process it, so I started comparing some of the numbers with some of the other charts in the presentation, and then I stumbled upon something eye-opening. Mm-hmm. For a while now, I've had this ongoing theory in my mind that the so-called silent majority, those unengaged, uneducated masses that the industry often points to, doesn't...
Like, we're gonna get a bunch of these, like, stupid fucking, like, Walmart Americans to pay all their money for this game. Like, I'm sorry, but unless you're making a basketball or a soccer or football game, that's not gonna happen. Maybe a gun game, but that's it.
Actually exist in the way they think they do. I've always believed that the controversies and the complaints that we see from gamers are more than just the noise of a toxic vocal minority. They have a real, tangible effect on how players spend their money and engage with games. And as much as these developers...
Well, here's how you know that's true. If they didn't have an effect, you wouldn't have companies paying streamers to create the effect.
And journalists would try to dismiss it. I think our collective opinions hold more weight than they give us credit for. The slide in the presentation that caught my eye was the one that showed that while U.S. GDP and world GDP were on the rise, indicating that global overall spending was up, player spending dropped 13% from 2021 to 2024. That's a pretty significant dip. And it made me think, what other industry exploded alongside gaming during this period? Social media.
Streaming, yeah.
And guess what? Social media didn't take the same dive that gaming did. So think about it. Players who would have normally not been involved in gaming communities suddenly found themselves more connected than ever. The silent majority.
So my understanding is it did a little bit. Stats, overview. So if you look at like 2021 and like you look at the average is like 3.1 million. And then you look at this to 2.4. So a 3.1 to 2.4 drop, that's about 33% drop, you know, just like average, about like 1/3. I actually think it's pretty similar to streaming. That's COVID. Well, that's my point, right? Is that what he's saying is that extrapolating COVID data to be an indefinite trend is retarded. It's a 20% drop? Yeah, well, a 20%, let's say it's a 20% drop. Okay, so I might have done the math wrong. My point is that that's about the same, actually. Didn't you mean YouTube and Instagram? I don't have access to that data as easily as I have access to Twitch. You could be right with Instagram or another platform. All I can look at is Twitch as like one point on a graph.
Those once quiet and unaware of the broader gaming world became a part of it during COVID. They began engaging with games on a deeper level, and their awareness grew. They didn't buy into what was just being fed to them. They started thinking critically and evaluated their purchases, participating in some of these online communities and sharing their thoughts on other platforms like Twitter, Reddit, and Twitch.
There's also a metagame. Oh, wow. Good chart. There's also a metagame of this, too. There's a psychological metagame that's going on, which is that in times of recession and in times of problems, people actually spend more money on entertainment to distract themselves. This is a observed phenomenon. So, like, not only is it stupid in one way, it's observably stupid based off of psychology that's been tested.
I think that Twitch is a really good example of this because while their viewership has dipped a little bit since 2021, they still retained a lot of the audience that they captured during COVID, and they haven't fallen back to their pre-2020 numbers. That shows a community that stuck around, that was once passive consumers, is now much more active and informed.
I think that's what's happened with all of these. They have grown, but they haven't continued to grow. And the problem is that prospective investment is banking on continuous returns and continuous growth, which is what's concerning them. It's not that they haven't retained some of the growth, it's that they haven't continued the growth. And that's what's hurting the value of these companies. It's because it's all about basically hoping that you can take your $20 and turn it into $30.
Of customers who have returned to the workforce,
it's about whether
who have
the graph
less money
is
to
going
spend
up
due
or
to
down.
inflation, who likely picked up on a couple of YouTube channels or Twitch streamers that are talking about different issues that are going on in the industry, and they're still watching, they're still engaging with that content. This isn't just a trend, it's a fundamental change in how we as consumers, as customers, as players engage with this industry. We're not just the ones buying games anymore. We are shaping the conversations around them. We are shaping what their sales look like at the end of the day. And I think the developers
hate that. They hate the fact that gamers actually have a voice in terms of what they buy and what they want in games. And I think that developers resent that a lot because that's why they turn off comments and disable replies and block people, and they try to shut people down that say the wrong things.
Journalists are starting to realize this, even if they're reluctant to admit it. The players really are the ones with all the power.
Yeah,
when you look at the growth of social media and you see how many people are connected to it, it's at a point where it's oversaturation. We're still seeing the same levels of engagement during the lockdown days. They're still the same. A lot of the channels probably have seen even more growth since then. I would guarantee if I went out and I started polling some of the people that blew up or got big or anything like that during COVID, they probably still retained a lot of their audience, except for some of those Minecraft.
Yeah. A lot of people on Twitch totally fell the fuck off. I'm going to be honest. Like, all of those people that were like the Among Us streamers, literally, basically every single one of them is totally irrelevant and nobody cares about them anymore. And there's like maybe 2 exceptions, and that's the same with Minecrafters. Total fucking, like, people just, you know, they went from middle school to high school, and I guess these people got lost in translation.
Guys, but
I'm not giving any names.
To themselves for the
no
most
names.
Part. But I think what the industry doesn't realize, or maybe they just don't want to realize it, that's probably really what it is that players are still engaged.
Don't put XQC on this. That's my boy. XQC took a golden parachute worth $100 million, sailed off into the sunset. He still gets over 20, 30,000 viewers every day. Don't talk shit about my boy. Absolutely not. I'm thinking about the people that are trying to, you know, hustling around that 2,000 range.
Engaged in all these discussions, all the views are still coming in on videos, all the tweets and all the Reddit stuff is still getting updates and all that good stuff. People are talking about the industry, but they're not buying the games and they're not playing the games. So what does that mean? That means that they're out there involved in these communities and they're avoiding games. You cannot tell me that all the controversy that was surrounding Dragon Age the Veilguard didn't affect its sales. People waited for reviews. They felt the general vibe of the game, and they avoided the game. And as such, the game failed. In most cases, a game with that name, a game that has that much cultural weight, Dragon Age, should have sold regardless. It still should have did really well, but it didn't. And why is it?
Inquisition sold 20 million copies.
Paying attention to videos or watching videos or keeping up on previews and stuff like that. They're going off of the vibe before they actually go to buy. And as such, they're avoiding stuff that they don't think is worth their money. You know, one thing that the analysts and the journalists aren't talking about is why GTA could sell for $100.
Because
the reason
good.
why is it's because it's a cultural phenomenon.
It's
it has been
game.
a cultural phenomenon. It's a
wow.
massive game. And
what a surprise.
The thing is that there's a lot of players that are out there that have overhyped the game in a lot of cases, but it's one of the most anticipated releases in forever, it feels like. And some people are confident the game is going to deliver, but I think a lot of people are going to buy it even if it doesn't because they're just going to do it. Simple as that. And there's a level of confidence there, consumer confidence, that I don't think exists anywhere else in the industry right now. Maybe there's a couple of studios that are out there.
From Software, Larian, Capcom, in my opinion, and like I'm like Warhorse now with Kingdom Come, Saber Interactive, they made Space Marine 2, Grinding Gear Games, Creative Business Unit 3. Fucking CD Projekt Red, I'm gonna be honest, they're still on my good list. Like any of these people, Atlas, yep, another great example. If these people make a game, I am proactively in, and they have to work to get me out.
Other people are like, for sure, I'll buy one of their games. FromSoft is like that for a lot of people. Larian's now become one of those studios as well.
Yeah.
I'm sure that people will probably pick up on Game Science or Saber or whatever it might be. But outside of that, the vast majority of games, most people are relatively leery about. I mean, there's not a lot of studios. Anytime any game comes out, I'm pretty nervous because I'm like, I don't know if it's going to work day one. I don't know if it's going to be worth my money. I don't know if they're going to deliver on all the promises, even with the gameplay trailers and stuff like that, because we've had games in the past that have showed us gameplay trailers and the game didn't play anything like it.
Yeah.
Sure, you're going to have some people that are out there that are going to be habit buyers.
Those are my favorite videos.
They will just go and pick up Grand Theft Auto, and I'm sure probably the same thing will happen for like sports games and stuff like that too. But I'm just going to be honest with you. There's just a lot of people that are out there that can't afford $100 video games. And this isn't a shot at people being like, oh, look at this broke boy or anything like that. Dude, I get it.
There are a lot of people who can afford things, but they just simply, like, there are people that make $100,000 a year, but they have a wife that's maybe a stay-at-home mom, and they have 2 or 3 kids, and they have to budget their money. That's just the way it is. And also, just because people are, like, I have friends of mine, a lot of my friends are like this. They make a lot of money, but they're still prudent with their money. I have some of my friends that these are not even streamer friends. They do not have streamer money. They go out every weekend, spend $1,000. And they're not making that. I don't know where they get the fucking money. But I mean, for a lot of people that have a lot of money, many of them have a lot of money because they're prudent with their money.
I don't like spending that kind of money on something. I could write it off on my taxes and I'll still feel dirty doing it. And to be honest with you, with the rise in popularity for PC gaming, I wouldn't be surprised if you saw a return to pirating. Just like in the early 2000s when it was CDs. They were overpriced. They were bulky. They were hard to store.
$19
They were
CDs.
easily damaged. $20-$30 for a CD.
It's ridiculous.
Bro, it was too much money. Everybody flooded to LimeWire and Napster.
And we would buy like a few of them, right? Like you'd buy like, the new fucking Coheed and Cambria, or a new fucking, back then, like AFI, My Chemical Romance, Tool, right? Like Dragon Force. But there are just like so many other albums that were just not worth $20. Linkin Park, yeah, exactly. You buy Meteora for sure.
Stuff like that. And
System of a Down.
You'll probably see the same thing here because a lot of it is based off of convenience. Well, general customers, I don't really think are really interested in pirating games. Just general consumers,
this one,
they
2005.
will be if the industry prices them out of it,
At a
because they
Walmart.
were at one point in time with music. Back in the day, nobody had any problem downloading movies, TV shows, and music, and still in a lot of cases people do. The only reason why they do it today is because it's convenient and relatively cheap in their eyes, because they're spending it on subscription programs or whatever it is. This is going to be devastating to the industry if they make this choice, because like I said before, listing off some of the games, think about the games that they would actually sell for $100. The vast majority of games that release in a year aren't worth that kind of money.
No, they're not.
And you know for a fact, anytime there's some type of just generic...
They're not worth that entry fee. And that's another really big component, is that for some people that get into a video game, they will pay $100 in a video game through microtransactions and other types of fees. But it's like a cover charge, right? Like there would be a lot of bars that like, I remember this is like going back 10 years and actually, oh my God, more than 10 years now. That I would go downtown and I would go to bars and clubs with friends of mine, right? I know you might not be able to believe this, but this was in another 3,000 years ago, right? And so on 6th Street, downtown Austin, we would just never go in places that had a cover charge. We just never would. And so, like, if you have a high enough cover charge, there are going to be some people that are just not going to go in. And the higher the cover charge, the higher the probability is that you have people that just don't even go in. Yeah, Cody knows. Yeah, exactly. He's in chat. Yeah, facts. Exactly. No, for sure, right? And you know, some of those fucking places, it's not worth spending $15 to spend $20 on a shot. You might as well just go somewhere else and spend $20 on a shot anyway.
Blanket price increase.
What's a cover charge? To get inside
they're all going to go
establishment.
For it. And they're all going to fail. Outside of a handful, maybe 1, 2, 3 games a year, maybe. And the funny thing is that even those games are going to suffer because most people aren't going to be able to justify $300 on 3 games.
That's crazy.
That's crazy. You out of your mind?
Yeah, true.
That's half a console. What are you thinking?
Well, it is now with the Concord tax.
Even a price increase up to $80, I think, is going to be too much. It's just, I don't care what people say about, you know, how realistically money feels today because of inflation or anything like that. $80 to $100 is a lot of money. And for most people, they're just going to pass on it. There's other games that are out there that are far cheaper, that are much more worth their money, and they're going to support them instead. Yeah. So if these AAA companies want to go ahead and do it, these big, you know, the biggest publishers and studios that we have that are out there, go for it. I love to make videos about it.
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
I'm going to make for BioWare. Oh, man, that's going to be, that one's a long time coming. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did, like the video, subscribe to the channel, share it to your friends, share it on social media and things like that. Boost my engagement. Make me famous.
I'll link you guys the video.
See you guys later.
This is a great
video. Stay
video.
cool, stay righteous, stay safe.
I love this video. Great, amazing fucking video. Fucking incredible. Absolute cinema. There it is. Give them a like. Give it a sub. We've watched a lot of Legendary Drops videos over the years, and I think they've all been great. And so this guy's always relevant. Yes, absolutely. And so I see this, and I think that a lot of these people, like, it's true that inflation has gone up. It is. It's true. But it doesn't matter. Like, you're thinking about the economics of it. You're not thinking about the psychology. Business, in my opinion, is more about psychology than economics. Economics follows the psychology. The psychology does not follow the economics. That's the difference. People don't understand that. It's consumer behavior. Exactly. It's consumer fucking behavior. We pay $100 for games. I would in some cases. Nobody asked them to hire Hollywood actors. We just want fun games. I think that if Kojima makes Death Stranding 2 with a bunch of Hollywood actors and it's really good, I'll fucking buy it. I don't care. But here's the problem. Most of these other people, you're not Kojima. You're not even close. Get them out. Just add in your generic, hot anime girl. Put it in there, you're going to be better off. That's the way I see it. People love them. Yeah, people, and also, like, those actors are really, like, same as with Norman Reedus, right? Everybody loves him. So, like, if you bring in an actor, like Jim Carrey is another one. Like, you hear Keanu Reeves and Jim Carrey are going to be in the Sonic movie. I'm sorry, but, like, every 35-year-old dad is, like, bat-chesting. I'm going to take my kid to see this. It's going to be so good. Yeah, exactly. And the kid's excited, too. Like, that's how to fucking print money. And so there you go.